How close was Zach Wilson to becoming a Houston Texan? Perhaps closer than you think. You feel good about C.J. Stroud, but it could have been Zach Wilson, who just got traded for peanuts as C.J. Stroud comes off his Rookie of the Year season. Let's go inside the locker room, make it make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do.
Zach Wilson traded for peanuts. You're feeling good about C.J. Stroud. Easy to point and laugh when you have a good quarterback. Life is better when that happens. But how close was Zach Wilson to being the Texans quarterback? I actually think it was pretty damn close. And I think I can convince you of that. We've been covering this daily on Sports Radio 610 in the Loop, 10 to 2 Central on the Odyssey app. Later on today, by the way, good morning to everyone. Happy Uniform Day. Cal McNair, Hannah McNair are going to join us live in studio. You can see that on the Sports Radio 610 YouTube channel. But I'm up early looking at the top NFL news. Zach Wilson traded for peanuts to the Denver Broncos. It's easy to point and laugh, but how close could he have been to becoming a Houston Texan? I think the answer is really, really close. And I'll lay out the time of events, and I will convince you how blessed the Texans are and how they got some blessings in disguise in the strangest forms. I'll take you back to January 28th, 2021. Deshaun Watson originally demanded a trade. He said he wanted nothing to do with the Texans organization. He wanted to be traded. That was a huge punch to the gut of Nick Caserio, who I'm assuming was looking forward to building a team around Deshaun Watson. However, Deshaun Watson made it clear he wanted no part of the Houston Texans, and he was very, very fierce with his demand. His agent backed it up, David Mulligetta. The team was speaking on it, and the Texans for a while were kind of, at the mercy of Deshaun Watson, who wanted out of town. All the while, Deshaun Watson was, there were leaks coming out that maybe he wanted to be in Miami. The Watson team, I remember this on WFAN. They were open to going to New York. I know Watson's business guy, Brian Burney, the great Brian Burney, who also works with C.J. Stroud. I know he's a New York guy. He had kind of talked about New York. We knew Deshaun kind of liked the big stage, so New York was a possibility. Why does that matter? Because as we know, Deshaun Watson had a no-trade clause. So if he's openly saying he wants to go to Miami or New York, then you got to think that New York is a possibility. Oh, by the way, what did the New York Jets have? They had the number 2 overall pick in the upcoming draft, in which a few quarterbacks were expected to go near the top. So you had Deshaun wanting to go to New York. You had New York having the attractive draft equity. But then March 16th, 2021 came through. And Tony Buzzley tweeted about the Deshaun Watson first accuser. This was the first of many. And this essentially, about a month and a week away from the draft, it made Deshaun Watson untradeable. And it forced the Texans to keep Deshaun Watson on the roster. We remember the awkwardness at training camp. They weren't going to trade him for nothing. They stood strong, and they kept Watson on their roster for a year, and they didn't trade him. Now, would that have been the case had this not come down? You got to think no. I mean, you got to think no, and you got to think teams like New York and Miami would have been open to trade for Deshaun Watson, and maybe a little bit more if the accusations had never come out. But because of that, you weren't trading him before the draft, and you were kind of just getting through the mud in 2021 with Deshaun Watson on your roster. He wasn't going where perhaps he wanted to go at New York, and you weren't getting the number 2 pick in the draft. April 29th of that year, Zach Wilson drafted number 2 by the Jets. Now, we know Trevor Lawrence was going to go number 1. Let's pretend the Texans get that number 2 pick. Are they going to go with Zach Wilson? Are they going to go with Trey Lance? Are they going to go with Justin Fields? Which quarterback would they have liked? I don't think there were too many people criticizing the Jets for the Zach Wilson pick. So it's natural to think that if the Texans trade Deshaun Watson, they have the number 2 overall pick. They're not going to get Lawrence. They go for who the number 2 guy is. Would they have thought it was Justin Fields? Would they have thought that it was Trey Lance? Probably not much of a better situation, damn sure, with Lance. Would they have gone with Zach Wilson? I think there's a strong possibility that would have been the case. He was the number 2 quarterback for a lot of people. Then we go to March 18th, Deshaun Watson. He flexes the no-trade clause. They get the the big bag, the big deal in Cleveland, and he ends up with the Browns. The rest is kind of history. The Texans, they draft Derek Stingley and Kenyon Green in 2022. Then 2023 comes around, and they take CJ Stroud. Lesson here, sometimes there are blessings in disguise. And I truly think that when you factor everything in, and we were all over this, we covered the Watson allegations, the lawsuits, all that. It would have been very possible that Zach Wilson could have ended up a Houston Texan had the Deshaun Watson accusations never dropped. I'm not saying that's a good thing, not saying it's not a good thing, but I'm just kind of saying it's kind of what happened. I wouldn't wish those accusations, if not true, on anyone, but I am glad that the Texans got CJ Stroud instead of Zach Wilson. So to go back to the original question, could Zach Wilson have been a Texan? The answer is hell yes, he could have been, and it could have been closer than many of us had thought. Luck, though, not a bad thing. Appreciate you for coming through. Subscribe, like, right along. It is the Locker Room. Cal McNair, Hannah McNair in studio on the Sports Radio 610 YouTube channel. Be out at the party tonight as well. The draft is upon us, and the uniforms are finally going to drop. What a time to be alive. We're all in it together. Thanks for coming through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey.